Welcome PSY 310 students. This is my own introduction to you, and I'll keep it somewhat brief. I am a licensed clinical psychologist, having been licensed in Maine for nearly 30 years, and also in the province of Ontario when I worked at the University of Toronto before coming to Maine. I would describe myself as somewhat introverted, and some would say a GOMS, a grumpy old man syndrome. So these are attributes of my personality that might be part of our relationships this semester. I do have a deep and abiding interest in psychology, having practiced it clinically at Sunnybrook Medical Center in Toronto, as well as what used to be the Augusta Mental Health Institute here in Augusta, now the psychiatric hospital that has taken its place called Riverview. I am a resident of Mount Vernon, an enthusiastic gardener, and have a continuing interest in global psychology as well as American psychology. For that reason, this semester I'll be starting to teach here in Augusta, but throughout most of the semester I will be in Europe, in the Czech Republic, in the town of Liberec. It's called Technical University of Liberec. I hope to be working with you there not only asynchronously, but also synchronously, which means if all goes well, we'll be meeting together on video conference in small groups, and hopefully with Czech students as well as yourselves. And I will tell you more about that after we get our semester underway. The course is designed to introduce you to the field of personality psychology, and the textbook is really an important part of the course by David Funder. I have high regard for him, that I mentioned in my earlier welcome video, and I'll show you a visual representation of the good doctor. So hold on just for a moment. Let me just switch up here a little bit. There he is. So in many ways, David Funder is an eminent global psychologist, contemporary of mine in the world today. He's written a number of books on personality psych, and importantly, he's taught personality psych from the University of California at Riverside, and he's a graduate of Stanford University, which has an outstanding psych department as well. So his book will be important. It will offer you, however, a very eminent research psychologist perspective. And being that my own identity is first a clinician, and then secondly an educator, and thirdly a researcher, our points of view will hopefully respectfully differ from time to time, as well as the selection of content. So the course content certainly will predominantly consist of delving into Funder's text, and really it'll take some doing to digest what he has to share with you. But beyond that, I will offer supplemental resources, either videos or articles, in the weekly folders that represent items which I don't think are represented adequately in the text, and are important, perhaps from a clinical perspective, and perhaps from my own perspective, being as I am also a practicing Buddhist and have a great interest in Buddhist psychology. I have lived in Japan, and I have lectured in places like China. So I've had a very fortunate career altogether. And it's continuing. So I am really quite enthused about this semester, insofar as I will be teaching a smaller number of courses, and hopefully can give them more of my attention and energy than I've been able to in the past. So those are the outlines of myself. Again, I am driven by a couple of things as far as values. Number one, our course needs to be useful to students. So we are not trying to simply, like guppies, swallow what funder has to share with us. Quite the contrary. I believe we live in a world of too much information, and I want very much for my students to know the difference between information and knowledge. So we'll be developing useful knowledge in this course, but consuming as much as you can of the information available is unwise. I often compare my courses to Home Depot, and my own role to that of the man in the red apron, or the salesperson in the red apron. But in any case, my job is to facilitate your selectively using the information that you're going to be introduced to, without having to think that you have to buy everything on the shelf or build everything in the house. That's not the case for this introductory course to the field of personality psych. It is a 300 level course, so that I will expect that you're familiar with the American Psychological Association and APA style. And if you're not, go to Dr. K's links on the Blackboard, where there is ample opportunity to become familiar with APA style and Division 8 in APA, which is personality psychology. So explore, and I think most importantly, I would ask you, especially at the beginning, to be curious. Do not believe that this is a teacher-centered course where you have to figure out what I want. Rather, we have to figure out what you need, and then how to accomplish those assignments that will be useful to you in demonstrable ways in your future, and more about that in the weeks to come. So I've taken another 7 minutes of your time, and I thank you for your attention. I will let the good Dr. Funder go at this point, and I will produce one more video before the class starts, and that will be found under the week 1 folder in the modules area. One more point with respect to the use of the discussion board. The discussion board is organized by, first of all, my having a virtual office called Dr. K's office, and that will be carefully monitored and be helpful to everyone if you have questions about the course expectations, or course content. Any kind of question there is fine, or any kind of recommendation for improving the course is more than welcome. Below that, on the discussion board, we will have the modules area, essentially monthly areas. The first one is the only one visible now, which is weeks 1 through 5. And let me stress this point, so if you're getting tired, please catch this point. The trigger questions, which I will post, are not assigned so that you do them all. Think about the trigger questions as a menu, and think about student questions as being better than instructor questions. So if you need to respond to questions that I'm posting and you find it useful to do that, fine. But better, post your own questions or respond to the questions of other students. Remember, my value is to make our discussion useful, and I'm very eager to avoid busy work. I think we're all busy enough. So if you find yourself on the discussion board just doing busy work, stop doing it. Give me a call. Let's reorient and figure out how to make the discussion board not what does the instructor want, or how do I figure out how to answer his questions, but rather how do we have a conversation that results in identifiable, useful learning. Okay, I'm getting long-winded. It's 9 minutes plus, so I will stop at that point.